Hello everyone. As I promised that in my recent community post, today I will be going through 5 more maps that have been created by different creators in the Fall Guys community. Do note that most of these maps have actually been created a few updates ago, so some of these might be changed in terms of how I view them, how I think maps can be improved on. And I would like to say that from this episode onwards, I will be implementing a slightly new formula as to how I rate and review your maps. So let's get started with the very first map for today. And do stick around to the very end as I will be showing all of you a teaser as to what I have been planning behind the scenes. And that particular video, when it is going to be done next weekend for me, will be quite the interesting one, and it is going to be a lot of talking, and really you'll get some insider knowledge as to how I really look at maps overall. But now, enough talking about what could possibly happen at the end. It is time to get started. Alrighty. So our first map for today is titled as Digi Sunday. Let us see what this map has in store, and I will run through with all of you what are the slight changes that I am looking at when it comes to rating maps from this episode onwards. So for the first part itself, we can already see that this map, being labeled as Digi Sunday, is set in the digital theme. And this is something that is to be sort of expected, as the digital theme can allow you to create the sundaes, or as some of you might know it as another type of ice cream, in the digital theme much more accurately. So moving down onto the actual map, and that is not how you move on to the next part of the map. You notice the various, what should I even call them? Bouncy donuts? No. Someone please help me to clarify what this part actually is called. But at the same time, as you progress through the platforms, you can see that the sundaes are actually created to the best of their ability. And moving on to this part, you actually see that there's a slime floor. However, do take note that this is not a checkpoint, so don't mistakenly fall into the blue portion floor that you see, which is actually a reminiscent of ice. Then I'm assuming that all these triangles down over here, you are looking at probably biscuits, or probably something that I would not understand what they are. Again, more clarifications are definitely needed. Now moving on into our first checkpoint of the map. I do want to point out one thing before I do continue, is that why would there be specific arcing walls on each of the various safe checkpoints, as one would call them? That is perhaps a question for everyone to think about, and we shall continue moving on to the next portion, which contains the... oh dear, I do not remember what are they called in the creative menu, as I don't really explore that option often. However, one would notice that there are actually 2 sets, or maybe even 4, that have been placed over here, and they actually ensure that players will not be able to fall off. That is something that will gain a little bit of bonus points. Then now moving on to the next portion of spinning, rotating this, or what are they exactly called? Oh my goodness. I probably have to search up what they are called in the creative menu before I start rating maps now, don't I? But regardless, the next portion of the map is more of platforming, and we shall actually move into some platforming. And also, one thing I do want to point out is that for this episode onwards, which I didn't mention it, I will be switching around my Spider-Gwen costume and the DoorDash costume that you guys have been used to in order to rate maps, as I feel that sometimes when I constantly use the DoorDash costume to rate, there is a higher chance of me having skill issues, so this is the slight change that I was adhering to, but there's also something else as well. And onto that will be the second checkpoint. So this, nearing to the final portions, we do have the blizzard fans that are face downwards to serve as a platform. And I feel that most of these platforms are relatively easy to navigate across. And now after navigating through that entire portion, there are some things that I want to point out is that all the beans are actually well designed, and unfortunately, the 30-second timer has actually elapsed upon us, so we shall quickly qualify and run through the map again while being in the DoorDash costume. Now then, apologies for the slight rerun of this map, as there are things that I want to show on the aesthetics of the map before I move on to the rating of it. Is that this entire map itself appears to be more on a deserted island resort that beans can relax themselves upon, and the aesthetics, though not extremely overwhelming, is enough to convince me that the creator did in fact place some effort in attempting to create the map itself, and that is something that I feel currently in Explore, 70% of the maps do not have that luxury, or either that they are just purely aesthetics and there are no gameplays to them. I have seen a couple of maps that have fallen to this particular categorization, and I feel isn't something that should be happening. So now moving on to this particular spinning disc right here, as we can actually see from the slight moving animation. Oops, that is not what I wanted to show. But if we decided to somehow stand on the very edges of the conveyor, and how did I fall there? Was it because my bean decided to constantly slide to my doom? But regardless, most of the conveyors are spinning at a pace for players to navigate a little differently. However, there is actually the conveyor belt that is duplicated such that it doesn't spin at all and provides a safety spot for players to navigate across. Now, reaching on this final part, we have our classic morally geek obstacles in the digital theme, and for me, I would say that this is something just for players to have some challenge in gameplay. And overall, I would want to say that it is very much more interesting to look at maps from a different limelight, especially much more sometimes in a different skin, as different things can always happen. And now let us move on to the actual rating for this map. So first thing I want to say is that, as I mentioned in my first run through, the Sundays itself has an intriguing design, even though I am aware that it is consisting of only one obstacle. The second point is that for the beans that are scattered across the map, I would say that it is well designed, looks realistic enough. I can tell that at least some effort has been placed into creating the beans, as I don't think not many maps involve beans in their maps alone. For map navigation, map completion, it is rather straightforward, not too difficult. However, with the addition of the invisible checkpoints, I feel that this map can have more checkpoints to benefit. So perhaps look at that as a possible improvement to work on. But regardless, I would be giving this map a rating of 7.5 out of 10, which would land you in the A plus tier of mine. And this is something at the end of the map rating series, or at least per every 10 or 15 episodes, I will rank the maps that I have rated highly and everything else. One thing to point out is that for newer players themselves, if they struggle a little, I am not too uh, intrigued by them, as sometimes players might not understand what is going on in certain aspects of the map. We've seen it a lot of times because not all of us are particularly involved in being in competitive lobbies. So with that, we shall move on to the second round of this particular episode. So moving on to the second map for today, we have Solar Getaway. So for those much more sharper beans, I would say, is that they might have already understood what map is this supposed to represent, although there are some unique concepts to it, I would say. So first thing, directly off the bat, there are two paths, one with the boom blasters, one from the side with the hexagon. Then moving on into our first checkpoint with the various hexagons and the punch gloves. Even though it is not completely reminiscent, but this is very hard, I would say about 40% is similar to the currently vaulted map of Cosmic Highway, as you can't really make platforms constantly move in and out, and maps I feel should have a unique take on them to make them a lot more interesting. And for this last part here, you would notice that there are different paths for players to walk through, and friendly little jump showdown bar that has to eliminate me to respawn, but that is not a very big concern. And lastly, in this particular area, we have some blizzard fans that actually, if players would notice, does not prove a threat to the players, as they ensure that the players get onto the hexagon tiles in order to safely make it to the finish line. With that, I will move on to what I have to say for this particular second map. And interestingly enough, there are very less thoughts from me. First thing, this map I believe is created in the original variation or original theme of the creative editor, then making use of the, I believe is the futuristic skybox, as per I last know, the latest skybox that has been released is the jungle theme skybox for Legacy Season 5. Now then, let us look at what I have to say for this particular map. So my first point when I mentioned that have I seen you somewhere, I've mentioned it as I ran through the map itself. It is a very, it not very as in complete reminiscence, but a good amount of similarities to the currently vaulted Unity map that was released in Free for All Season 2, that being Cosmic Highway. And as I mentioned nearer to the end, the particular points of Blizzard fans making players land on the hexagon tiles, I would say that it's more of a prevention of error, but at the same time also takes a little bit of a extra skill for players due to how the goal is to make them do the various jumps on the hexagon tiles. And as mentioned from the start and nearer to the end, there are multiple paths for players who are more skilled and all want to speedrun them. These little details would help players have a better and enjoyable experience, as sometimes you just don't want to wait around for a specific part to happen. Anyways, one thing I feel that for players of any skill level, because of how limited portions there is for players to actually respawn, I would say that the time to clear them will probably be about 2 to 3 minutes. And moving on to a rating of this map would be as well again a 7.5, which means it is an A plus rating from me. So some of you might wonder, when would a S or S plus map appear? This is something you have to see once I get into the... Alright, sorry for the slight disruption, but if I were to recall what I've mentioned is that I believe you will have to wait as to my actual ranking of all the maps I've rated so far to see which maps can potentially qualify for an S or S plus map, as there are very big criteria to meet in order to reach that standard. With that, I would like to move on to the third map of this particular episode, and it will be so for this third map today, we have the map known as Mid Spooks. So first thing I want to say is that the map itself is attempting to show a replica of how it would like in the Halloween season, if appropriately we are in the correct month before. And besides that, I would say that this map alone is rather relatively easy. We also have some potential skills for players that are much more skilled at the game. One thing I would like to point out is that the rough bounces that are stated here appears to be camouflaged by some sort of pumpkin based on what can be seen. But regardless itself, moving on to the second checkpoint, and with all the various underlying obstacles, there are multiple paths for players to utilize. And I would say that the map itself is relatively easy to work around. Multiple paths, I would rather numerous number of checkpoints for players to walk around. And even the finish line is actually customized. I feel most of the current maps nowadays created doesn't actually give that feeling of being fully customized that even includes a customized finish line. So I think this is something that is well done by the creator of the map. But now regardless, let us move into what I feel that the map deserves as a rating from me and my thoughts on it as well. So this map itself is actually rather relatively quick to be completed. At the very beginning, most of you will have observed that there is an Ethos at the very being present there, and this can actually allow for players that are a lot more skilled to make use of the Ethos to speedrun. And I even though I did not do it in this run through as I played through the map, I did test it before, and the Ethos is strong enough to launch you right into the next checkpoint for you to be safe, and you won't get frustrated at constantly filling the Ethos, unlike the current Ethos strength of of Slime Climb nearing the very end, where ever since its nerf, not even Mediatonic themselves figured that that Ethos actually failed. So the estimated time to clear a map like this, you are looking at around 2 to 3 minutes for those players that are a lot more experienced. If perhaps say you are a little less experienced, you would add around 1 to 2 extra minutes to that timer that I have particularly placed down. But regardless, the rating for this map would be a 8.3 out of 10, which actually makes this map land into the S tier ranking for me, but still a little bit off before it fully hits the S plus timing. If I would say perhaps some things to really improve on to make it a full worthy S plus map, it's probably somewhere around the improvements of the customized drum bouncers to attempt to make it a little bit more spooky, because all I'm seeing from my view is just a black color covering, and this is ignoring the fact that when you make use of the drum bouncers in game, they still have the drum bouncer effect, but I won't deduct any points for it. But the moment the coverings of the drum bouncer while it is inactive gets a little bit more customization, it can deserve a little bit higher of a rating, and that is all I have to say for this third map. Now let us move on to the fourth possible map of this episode. Alright, so the fourth map we have for this episode is titled Space Slide Showdown, for people who might have missed it. So this map itself, for those of you who have at least played from the very beginning of Free for All Season 4 or the start of Creative, Mediatonic themselves have created a map that made it into their own variation of solos, which they titled as Knockout. And this map itself was a fun little challenge speedrun map that really tests players on how fast they can clear this map itself. And the creator of this map has done a space-like themed replica of this map, where I believe he even placed in extra checkpoints as compared to the low number of checkpoints that Mediatonic themselves have placed. And even though it is not completely obvious in this one, the finish line is partially customized. So with that, I will quickly give my thoughts and ratings of this map. And in it is something that I have finally started to firm down upon, as if maps that I've been recreated and just slightly tweaked to fit a different theming or their own twist of it, the rating is officially will be fixed at a set amount. It won't go any higher or any lower, and which means that this map will have a rating of a solid 8 out of 10. The 8 out of 10 is for having the fixed effort for being able to recreate the map, but at the same time I have to acknowledge that the maps that Mediatonic themselves created back at the beginning of Free for All Season 4 were indeed low effort and didn't give exactly the vibes of how they created maps back in the legacy seasons, as well as from Free For All Season 1 to Season 3. But enough about how maps can be improved on or when maps are recreated. I would say that this map itself, having the ability to add in the own theming of the space like theme, is rather impressive itself, due to how you have to ensure that the budget for everything still fits within, as I cannot be certain when this map was created, but I feel the budget might have been already been increased to 2,000. There is a chance for the budget to still be 1,000, but regardless of what was really the case itself, it is still impressive to recreate the map to being nearly identical to how the original was indeed created. With that, we shall move on to the final map for this episode. And the final map we have for today is titled Space Invader, and let us take a look at what this map has to offer for us. So first thing, from the very beginning, we can see that this map itself has an extended path start point, where we can see that it is attempting to replicate the like spaceship, with the small triangle platforms acting as the rocket flame, or what is exactly called. Someone might have to correct me in the comments, but regardless itself, the thing we can see that making use of the speed up and camouflage donut bouncer courtesy of a sticker is being present. The extra speed boost to help players navigate through, and for players who are perhaps a little less skilled, there is a second path for them to move through without much issues. The next part itself contains slide, and again, this type of having multiple paths would help players that are less skilled to also clear them without much issue. The next main section will be the rotating planets with a bar itself that can increase the difficulty of the map, but I feel for most players they will just be sitting on the outer planets while avoiding the rotating bar, and it's mainly how players will clear that section. Then upon reaching the, I believe, second checkpoint and navigating through the drum bouncers, we will come into an area where the fan would, I would say, about 80% chance to blow you right past the checkpoint trigger zone and land you right on either the right or the left yellow platform where I am currently on, so you might want to backtrack a bit and set the particular checkpoint. But other than that, I would say that the platforming in this map is rather simple, and sliding our way live as we give our thoughts and ratings for this particular map. So in this final map itself, oops, that is the wrong map. I do not have much to say about this final map, because overall it is a fast-paced map. There are different gameplay designs that can fit this particular map. And because of how fast paced it is, I feel that something to really work on is perhaps the possible amount of qualification percentage, because I don't feel that players that are less skilled can easily qualify from it. But then again, the map that was released in Free For All Season 1, Track Attack, it wasn't also really a map that players that are less skilled can work with, because with all the speed arcs, and even now when we talk about the skill level ceiling of players now, it's all about speed running, and eventually players will have to understand how to run through maps like these without too much of a hinder. But with all that said and done, the rating for this map would be a 7.4 out of 10, which means this map alone is sitting comfortably at a A plus rating of mine. Is there aesthetics in this map? Most definitely yes, but remember, I've always mentioned that the aesthetics of maps do not make up how I rate up maps. Most importantly, it is more on how the amount of gameplay there is and how newer players are able to qualify from them. As maps, I feel definitely should be judged by how playable it is, and not because of being left a like or dislike for simply because I am able to qualify or I am unable to qualify. But sometimes there are other factors that can affect whether a like or dislike is placed, but I feel in general the like dislike system that Fall Guys themselves has implemented is a little bit scuffed, and it is rather just sad to see, to be very honest. And now it is time for the teaser that you guys have been waiting for since the, well, perhaps most of you have been waiting for since the start. And all it has to show, it's a picture. However, what does it really mean will be explained as well. Alright, have you guys figured out what this teaser is trying to explain to you guys? So, for those that who might have to perhaps zoom in on the video itself to understand what is all the various small little pictures mean, it is actually each of the Unity maps that have been released in the game ever since from Legacy Season 1 when the first came out, all the way to Free For All Season 3, which was the last season in which Unity maps could be found in the game, and it will be rated as part of a video. I have done a tier list of this before, and I feel that just a tier list alone without any sort of explanation would not be optimal, and I will be doing one while explaining why I feel each map deserves their own individual rating. So please keep a lookout on it when it comes to next weekend. thank you for watching this video, and I hope that y'all have perhaps learned something new as to perhaps how to create maps or assigning different elements so that players can all enjoy a map and not just simply get frustrated because you love creating tough maps, or as the community will call them as kaizos, all for the sake of torturing players. I feel that it's not really the way to go, but I hope to see you all really, really soon.